pride and dignity to stop the New World Order. Welcome to HPANWO TV. As you can see, I'm off on another adventure. I'm on a coach, I'm going to Cambridge, and I'm actually going away on an expedition with the East Anglia UFO group. I'll find out where I'm going when I get there. It should be pretty interesting. Be nice to see Tony and Kaz and all those people again. Unfortunately, Graham is not going to be there, which is a shame, because I'm wearing a very triggering t-shirt. Should be fun, looking forward to it. Right, so something interesting I want to show you. You remember the trouble I had on, I mentioned this I think, on the Oxford Tube. I couldn't access my own pages. Well, the X5 is also a stagecoach vehicle, and look. It's not banned on here. I don't know why that is. I think it's a bit strange. Anyway, I've got a good book to read there, you see. Everyone's talking about this one. So that'll make the time pass. There's no doubt about that. What? No, not angry. That's not just a temporary sign. That's like a permanent alteration to the coach. You might recognise this place from my Rendlesham Forest thing where I went with Tino and Larry. This is Bedford coach station, and I'm on a completely different vehicle. I've had to move from the X5 to another bus for the last days of the journey, from Bedford to Camborne. Well, this bus goes all the way to Cambridge. There's no longer a direct coach service between Oxford and Cambridge, and there has been one continuously until very recently, dating back to pretty much when buses were invented. You may have noticed, as I showed you on the X5, the toilets are sealed, and it's not just an out of order sign, taped on there like a paper one, a temporary one. The door has been sealed with a metal plate, and there is actually a permanent metal placard been put on the door saying not in use. The toilet on that X5 has been deliberately shut down so people can't use it, and that's probably because it's probably some rule. It's been reclassified or something as a bus. It used to be a coach, and now it's been reclassified as a bus. I would be surprised if when they buy new vehicles, they replace them with ones like this rather than the long distance coaches. Shame that. It's not really a major inconvenience unless you want to go to the toilet, but it means I have to change buses in Bedford now from now on. That's I don't know, end of an era really, but never mind. I'm on my way now to the second part of my journey to Cambridge, getting off at Camborne, where I'm meeting Tony. You remember Tony from the UFO, that group. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the journey's at an end. I got to Camborne, and I'm here with Tony, who you know. He's been in previous videos, yeah. And well, we're off on an adventure tomorrow, Tony. Where are we? We're going off with the group. Where are we going? Well,
we're going to one of these lockdown rooms where you go in and you have to find the clues to get yourself out, and that's situated in between Rendlesham and where we're not going to, but a little place called Aldeburgh, which is a little fishing village, and there was what's sort of famous incident happened there between the wars, and called the Aldeburgh Platform, and it was basically a big round platform with lots of men round the side floating down the street, and we're going to do a little walking talk about that as well.
Brilliant.
Fish and chips and then home.
Brilliant. I mean, that's very interesting. The Aldeburgh Platform happened, was it actually between World War I and World War II? It wasn't during World War I?
No, it was basically the end of World War I think.
Right. Oh, it's just some of the skeptics have been saying that it was a Zeppelin. It was an observation platform for a Zeppelin, and a Zeppelin being a large airship of the type you don't get nowadays. The Germans had them and they flew them over Britain, but that doesn't make sense. That, even leaving that aside, it doesn't fit the evidence. But it's a fascinating story. But a lady in a room above a pub literally looked out of her window, and there was like an object which was like a flat. It was like a platform with the rails, and there were men on there. And she described them as completely Nordic, like humanoid. And she sort of said they were wearing uniforms. And this was long before sci-fi movies. This was long before Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon and all the other things that the skeptics blamed the entire UFO phenomenon on. So how do you explain it, Tony? I mean,
I don't know. Yeah. In actual fact, the pub you're referring to was and still is, I think, a hotel. I'm not sure if it's still a hotel, but she actually lived in a house next door to it.
Oh, right, not
we'll be pointing that out, and we have some pictures as well. And the railway station was next door to the hotel, and this object flew over the top of the railway and away from it and out of sight.
Blimey. Right, this is it's going to be. I think this sounds exciting. So I'm very much looking forward to it. I've come up early because of the way the coaches work. I couldn't really come up tomorrow morning. So Tony is very generously giving me a place to stay, not just the night after, but the night before. So thank you very much, Tony.
You're very welcome, mate. Always pleased to have you around.
That's always good to be here.
Not do any filming.
What is it?
Want to do it fairly soon. Just along the river back here.
All right, I'm just rolling now. Just have a look up. Just rolling out. Oh, we've got a level crossing's coming. You know what happens in the movies, don't you? Yeah. Here we go. No, we survived that one. We didn't do a Thomas Ronald Barron. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is about 11 o'clock in the morning here in Cambridgeshire, and it's this lovely flat countryside with a wonderful, there's wonderful views here. You know, the sunsets yesterday were fantastic, and great place for sky watching. You know, no hills, it's all flat. There's these canals. It reminds me a bit of the Netherlands, actually, the dikes and things. But it's Saturday morning, and we're now heading for Newmarket with Tony and Sean of the East Anglia UFO group. And you met Tony yesterday. That's Sean there, just driving. And yeah, we're going to meet up with the others. And there's going to apparently be we're going to have another vehicle to take us to where we're going to go. So it's exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing the other guys. And
I'm on my way, so I hope you don't want anything.
We've got some fun things coming up today, which I will capture for your enjoyment. And that there is the vehicle in which we're going to be travelling. Lord's Travel. Very nice. And this is the minibus we're on. Tinted windows, curtains. Very smart. I'm currently
great company.
Yeah, that's right. There's loads of. I don't know if anyone doesn't want to be in frame. I'll keep you out of frame. Don't worry. Just let me know. The seat's a bit small for me. I think I'm just too big for the seat. I think that's the problem. But it's a long time since I've been in a vehicle like this. It's like a mini coach. It's like a. It's generous indeed. Yes. Oh, it was given to me in enormous quantity by God. So we're now going to head for our first destination of the two main destinations on this particular adventure. So I'm excited, looking forward to it. We're now driving through Suffolk towards the east. Eventually we're going to hit the coast, but we've got to stop off somewhere else first. We've just arrived at something called an escape room, which is our first major stop for today. Now, I don't exactly know what an escape room is, but it's some kind of game. So I'll have to find out when I get in there. But the team here has assured me it's great fun, so I'll take their word for it. I'll let you know afterwards what it's like. I probably won't get a chance to film while we're in there. Right, and this is a very pleasant, warm day. We've come to this sort of campsite. There's you can see over there. There's some really old. Maybe I'll get a better picture of them later. But there's some really old-fashioned caravans. They're like really, like archaic caravans. And there's these like chalets. It's like Butlins. Someone's describing it as. But we're heading now for a Quonset hut. These Quonset huts is where we play the game. So, are you all ready for some executive team building, guys?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That's right. It's not paintball, but it's still going to be fun, I'm sure. So we're going to go in somewhere. I don't know exactly where we go. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm in an air raid shelter. It's Second World War. Look at all this stuff. Apparently all this is authentic.
Yeah.
It's all real stuff from the war. And we've got to find a way out. I won't have time to film because it's a game. So I'll see you at the other end. Oh, I think we've solved the first bit, but there's the noise of falling bombs and air raid sirens outside. But we've solved the first bit. I think we're now currently trying to get the combination lock open. We've still got to find the key. But we're looking around for that. I thought I'd solved the lock over here, but I haven't, unfortunately. Now these chairs here are called porter's beds. That's what I call them. Do you know why I call them porter's beds? It's because this is the traditional way hospital porters sleep.
Yeah, we did that on there. 42. Live, you aren't the answer to Live the Universe. Never.
We're out of the escape room now. As you can see there, these old caravans, they're really unusual. Reminds me of the Findhorn community. There's another one. Yeah, well, we didn't get out there in time, but it's actually a bit rainy now, so I'll tell you more maybe later on. But it was good fun. It's a good fun game to play. This sort of live action role play thing. You have to escape from this air raid shelter, as you saw, by finding certain clues. And yeah, it's a bit like doing the Times cryptic crossword. Actually, quite frankly, it's not very nice weather. But I'm going to go to the bog and then I'm going to get back on the coach. Over there, that Quonset hut there, that is where the escape room is, and you see these are genuine World War II artifacts. Apparently, all the stuff in there is genuine, he says, and it looks sort of like genuine, like it's rusty stuff. Yeah, not just it wasn't just like reproductions; they're genuine World War II artifacts. And I think it is the kind of thing that would appeal to people who love crosswords and word searches and things like that. And it's kind of a live action version of doing a word search, and it's fun. I mean, I got some of them. I got the Bluebird. I don't want to say too much because he asked us to keep the details confidential because you might want to play this game yourself one day. But it was an authentic looking World War II shelter. My grandma used to spend many nights in those, You basically have to go from one clue to the next clue to the next clue, and eventually you find your way out. You're locked into this shelter, and you have to escape. The only way to escape is to go through various things which give you clues to unlock different locks, which lead to things which give you other things, which give you other clues, until eventually you get to the outside door and then finally you can get out. And it's really well designed. It's a really well designed, amazing sort of game. It's quite something. Yeah, it's good. You've got 1 hour to get out of there. And there's different kinds of. They do several different escape room scenarios there, and there's many different others. Apparently, there's a professional sport. There are pros who do it, and that's quite something. They are probably sort of like people who would do crosswords, but they want more exercise. So I'm glad I did that. It was great. That was fun. That was an interesting new thing I did there. And
Kaz, did you tell him that we booked it up because of the alien thing?
And now we're heading for Aldeburgh by the seaside. We're going to. Oh, sorry, Kaz. Won't be a sec. We're going to do a great British tradition, which is a wet, rainy afternoon by the seaside. So come to this there. Now I picked this up. I normally would do my souvenirs at the end, but I've got a feeling this is going to be a bit mushy by the end of the day. The Clevedon House secret nuclear bunker in Essex. Exciting outdoor and indoor adventure for all ages.
I've been there,
Oh right, yes, it looks good. Sean was talking about it.
We hope to go as a trip sometime.
Yeah, it looks good, doesn't it?
We'll just meet everybody.
That looks like fun, doesn't it? Yeah, right, that's something on my list there. Well, you've just arrived in Aldeburgh. This is our coach here, and the noise you can hear over there is people running scared from the aliens. Actually, they're just playing rugby. We're now going to head on. Tony here is going to give us a little tour. So we look forward to hearing what you have to say about this very strange place.
Heading that way.
Right you are.
Now, it's a little bit confusing because there's actually two Aldeburghs. We travel down this road beside the church for about half a mile or so, and there's the seaside Aldeburgh. And the reason this place grew up is because at one time there was a railway station here, and it couldn't get any further through the other Aldeburgh because there's all marshland it has to cross. So they finished the station just here. I've got a few photographs, so hopefully hopefully I can show you some pictures. All those houses are new, and they've been very clever because even the houses that look old, there's some down there that look like medieval, and we passed one up here, but they're all actually new. At the time we're talking about, 1916, 17, There are very few houses here, because what houses there were was only here because of the railway. Now just here, it's called the Railway Inn. There used to be a hotel, and literally just to the right of it, just there, there was this station. It's a poor picture, but there's a station there. So just to the left of the station was this railway hotel. To the right there's just big yards just there. And most of these buildings here, these houses were here, just to my right. And there was odd houses on the road back up here. So these houses to the left were here, and there's some more up there on the right. And they are the only ones what were here at the time. And most of them, like these ones here, were actually built by the railway for their employees. And at the time, 1918, there were very few people here during the day. Are you okay with that?
It's going to take off in a minute.
Down this little lane, if you go down there far enough, you come to marshes. And that's literally the reason why the train never went any further, because the ground was unstable just down this little lane. Now this lane didn't look like this then, it was literally just a little dirt lane going down here. I'll see if I can show you another picture. Just the other side of the railway, you can walk around the estate and you can actually see it's all grown over, but that's where the railway used to go years ago, and you can actually follow the railway all the way back to the main line. This was closed by beaching in the 1960s to save money, basically. That's a whole nother story, but so the railway went down there. It was basically what they call a branch line, and he closed down lots of the branch lines. Bear with me. We have a map here somewhere. Here it is. I don't know if you can see this very well, but here's a map of Aldeburgh, where we are. Here's the roundabout where we're standing. We've just walked down here. No, we haven't. We've walked down here, sorry. And this is where the UFO platform, which you'll learn more about in a moment, came down. This dotted line down here. It went down that road there, and then ran off between two buildings, which I'll show you, across the railway and out toward the sea. This is the railway that I just showed you on that pretty crummy picture, and that's where the railway station was. So the railway just all went up here. Give me an idea where everything was. Is everybody with me so far?
Yeah.
Right. Well, on this date in 1918, most of the people who were here either worked on the railway, they worked in the fields, or they worked in Aldeburgh on the sea, because they used to do and still do fishing in the sea over there. If it's dry enough and we can get towards the sea, you'll be able to go out there and see all the fishing boats, but it's unlikely you'll see them, I guess. So during the day, this place was completely empty. There was perhaps just a handful of people here. On this particular day, a woman called Mrs. Whitelaw, I think, just let me double check the name, Whiteland, Mrs. Whiteland, and she was around until a few years ago, and then she died. She lived to a ripe old age, but she lived down there in either number 12 or 10 or 14 or something, down there somewhere where that little outbuilding is on the front of the cottages. She lived down there, and this particular day she'd been cleaning upstairs in her bedroom, and she had got all the beds made, done all the dusting, the cleaning and what have you, and she stuck her head out of the window just to get a bit of fresh air and to see if anybody was walking about so she could have a natter with, because there wasn't many people in those days. And I'll show you something there in just a sec. No, I won't. Here we go. So she was sticking her head out of the window, turned right to look down this way, coming up this little roadway just here. She sees what looks like a platform with brass handrails going around it, and some men in what looked like a uniform with flat caps on, similar to Navy people. And we've got a picture of it here. This is Mrs. Whiteland there, looking out. In reality, there's more houses just here. There's Mrs. Whiteland, and there's the platform with two brass handles round it, and people standing around there. So it came up here, and it goes down there. Now, what we need to do for the next part is travel down there to Mrs. Whiteland's house, and I can show you the rest of the tour.
It's interesting. We're just heading now down the road. Where those houses, those new houses are, is where the station was. We're going to head down towards Mrs. Whiteland's house. This is the famous Railway Inn, which I wrongly thought the UFO had been seen out of one of those windows upstairs in the pub, but it hadn't. It had actually been seen by someone in a house along here, as Tony's about to explain. Is this it?
This is the one, I think, number 10.
Number 10.
Yeah.
Nice.
I think this is the one.
I agree.
Yeah, really good.
Is this house here? Those upstairs.
You have to
these
remember, in
windows here.
1918, there wasn't mobile phones, television, even the radio was very limited. Most people got their news from newspapers, so there's a lot more simple life in those days. And tiny little villages like this, which had very little in here at all, just the two roads I've shown you.
We've not done mine.
This is Whiteland's house. Hold on.
It's getting more and more windy, guys. I don't know how much you can hear, just the wind on the mic.
This isn't quite as smooth as I was hoping, right?
Yeah,
Because of the wind and the wet.
It's all part of living in England, isn't it?
Here is a drawing with some details on it that the son of Mrs. Whitelaw or Whiteland, I can't remember her name now, Whitelaw, that she drew. So here's the map, thank you. Here's the map that the son did, but she was still alive, and that clearly shows you the railway station. And this is this little bit here where the bit sticks out. You can see it there. There's a carriage house there where they used to stack corn and stuff. They're the houses that we just walked down beside, and that's where we parked us there. Here's a little sketch on, and there's the actual platform, we call it, rather than a flying saucer. That's the platform that she described, and that's what she's describing how it looked there. So this is an actual copy of an original that she did. Thank you.
This window here,
A lot of skeptics said at the time, well, it's just a big balloon. Now these balloons that they was referring to are massive things like this, and I don't think that platform coming down here and then going between these two buildings, which would be the railway just beyond.
Can't remember. It went between those two walls there.
Oh no, it's higher than the building.
Oh, right.
It's going between them, if you know what I mean.
So there's only like 5 feet between.
Here's the
They used,
please.
on them Zeppelin things, they used to suspend a gondola.
Indeed. I'll show you one in a second if I can peel these away from one another.
Yeah. There's no airships that big today. They're huge, those Zeppelins.
So there's the platform with the people around it, with the brass rails and the people with blue uniforms. And as Russell rightly said, they used to hang gondolas underneath for spotters for sending their artillery and stuff. That's what they looked like, which is not a very good picture. It gives you a bit of an idea.
Doesn't look anything like what she saw.
No, it looks nothing like she saw. She actually drew the picture, and in the 60s the Americans built a platform that looked like that. It didn't work very well, so they never used it, but that's from the 60s in America. And there's one more little bit of information I'll give you, and I'm going to have to read some notes in a minute. Now, nobody believed Mrs. Whitelaw about this. She wasn't believed at all. But the day she died, she was adamant that's what she'd seen. Now, the strange thing that happened, if I can just find it.
Take time.
Yeah. I can't find it, so I'll have to just tell you as I know. There's a reverend was travelling, I think, into London on a train. And he saw flying over some fields this giant platform about 25 feet across with handrails around it and men standing around the handrails with uniforms, blue uniforms on, with flat caps like sailors wear. And the irony is, this sounds exactly the same as the one that was here, but this was 20 years later, and it was going into London.
1938, wasn't it?
So that, ladies and gentlemen, is the Aldeburgh Platform, and Aldeburgh proper, we're now going to up the road if we get back to the bus without getting soaked.
Right.
Yay!
Well done, Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
I'll leave the right.
Well done, Tony. That was very good.
Oh dear.
And this is the house. This is where it happened. Yeah, it came up there, flew along this road here, up that lane, which is the lane in those days, and then it turned a corner here and went over the top of those two roofs there and out towards the sea.
Okay. Point where the energy came from. Energy point to the lady's house who stole this.
Oh wow, you're a dowser. Goodness me, Mum.
So the energy is still there.
That's it, isn't amazing? This lady's a dowser, and the energy of where the craft went is still present in the area after more than 100 years.
Still present.
Wow, thank you very much. I had to go dowsing once. It's actually quite difficult, but some people have a natural talent for it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. It's amazing. Okay, we're going to head back to the coach now before we get completely soaked. But this is it. This is where all the railway in and the Aldeburgh Platform, an early UFO event. Okay, guys, I'm just going to give you a little bit of background now over what Tony's just talked about. Tony did a really, really good job, actually, considering the environmental conditions. In other words, it was soaking. But I will just go into a little bit more background. You probably missed a little bit of that, possibly because of poor sound quality as well, wind on the mic. But I've actually located where all this kind of sorts itself out, where it all comes from, who first heard about this. And it says here, on the 8th of August 1968, Alfred Whiteland, born 1910, it says here, saw the letter he had written to the Daily Mirror published. My mother has often told me, this is where it all kind of starts, I think. My mother has often told me the following story over the years, and as she's 84, I'd like to find out for her who these mystery men were, what they were doing. This is the story, he wrote. It was around the middle of World War I on a weekday. All right, so it's me talking now. Interestingly, the actual date has not been pinpointed. The middle of World War I. Tony did say he wasn't sure exactly what year it was, but World War I was 1914 to 1918. So we're looking at maybe 1916, 1916, something like that. But he carries on here. On a weekday, Mother was living at Aldeburgh, Suffolk. We went to her house, as you know. She'd gone upstairs just before dinner, opened the casement window. This is me talking now. The casement window being the window I showed you upstairs. I don't know exactly what casement window means, but it's the window I showed you. And looked out to see who might be on the road. Having looked up and down and noticed there was no one in sight, she was about to step back when something urged her to look again. A little above the level of the house, 8 to 12 men appeared on what seemed to be a round platform with a handrail around it. This they were gripping tightly. She could see them so clearly. They were wearing blue uniforms and little round hats, not unlike sailors. She heard no sound from the machine as it came off the marshes. It turned a bit and went over the railway yard to disappear behind some houses. Have you got an explanation for this? The so-called Aldeburgh Platform hovered just above the shed around 8 metres high and turned suspiciously quickly and with great agility at a right angle before it disappeared. Mother says she kept wondering what was making the thing move and looked up into the sky and then at the men and then in between their legs to see if there was an engine there in the middle, but she could see nothing. Wrote Mr. Whitehead Jr., who died 18 years after his mother in 1989. That's when the author wrote. It's interesting that he says that his mother often told this story, so it was something she maintained her whole life. It's interesting, this appears to be, as far as I know, the source of the entire story, unless there are other witnesses in the area. Now, the problem is we're talking about well over a century ago now. I know that one of our team actually did pay a brief visit into the Railway Inn and asked behind the bar if anyone had heard of this. Nobody had. It is possible there are people in Aldeburgh who obviously won't remember this. No one who was there at the time who may have heard Mrs. Whiteland's story will still be alive. However, their descendants may be, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, who may know something about this. These kinds of legends tend to live on quite a long time. For example, the Aurora incident in Texas, USA, dates back even further. It had actually happened 20 years before the Aldeburgh Platform was seen, yet people there still talk about it. In this case, it involved a crash retrieval, so it's slightly more intense. However, it's interesting, isn't it? I found this. By the way, that's from it's in East Anglia Daily Times, which is a bit notorious because it's the one that has taken a rather sceptical angle towards things like the Rendlesham Forest incident. Interestingly, the East Anglia Daily Times in 1880, which is 100 years exactly to the year before the Rendlesham Forest incident, reported on something similar that was seen in a village not far from, I forgot what the village was, I think it was Ike, nothing to do with David Icke. Ike, which is actually slightly north of where RAF Woodbridge is now, where people what they describe is exactly the same thing that Colonel Holt describes, a large sphere, things dripping off it, stuff like that. So I think this area actually has something of a reputation, shall we say. For example, there's if you Google Lantern Marsh, you'll come across, of course, an album by Paul Eno of ambient music. Yet, Lantern Marsh is a place. It's a saltwater marsh, not far from, just north of Woodbridge in Suffolk, just near the Rendlesham Forest area. And the reason it's called Lantern Marsh is people often see luminosities on it, similar to the ones that Colonel Holt saw. There's this article as well here you might be interested in. It's just, here you see a photograph. This is good. You actually see a photograph here. That I think is Mrs. Whitehead, and that must be Mrs. Whiteland. And that there is her son. And here we have some artist's impressions, which I've actually cropped these for the title. There are two artist impressions here of what the object looked like. The one on the left here, as you can see, is it appears that it's given it a transparent bottom. You can actually see as if it's made of glass. You can see the men standing around it through the bottom. Now, there's nothing in Mrs. Whiteland's report that says that. And here you see a slightly bigger object, and it's thought to be 30 centimetres thick, 3.5 metres. Now, 3.5 metres is European for, what is it, around about 15 feet or so. And that's more likely what we're looking at here. This is slightly bigger, probably than 3.5 metres. That's probably slightly smaller. But here you see a group of people, a hand standing around the outside of this object. Again, which is just a platform with a rail just levitating. It's just levitating in the air. I've done my own little artist impression here of what you would have seen. You have to excuse the modern cars in the foreground, obviously, but this is what it would have looked like. You see there the Railway Inn on the right. To the right of that was the railway station, which no longer exists. Going down the road there, you actually that's basically where the object went. I think I've judged the height fairly accurately, because it couldn't have been much lower than the rooftops or the chimneys, because if it was, then it wouldn't have been able to pass between the two buildings we showed you, because there's a very narrow gap there, certainly far less than the 3.5 metres, the width of this object. So it must have been higher than the rooftops, though not much higher. It can't have been much higher because Mrs. Whiteland saw it well. You may notice there I've actually painted Mrs. Whiteland. These are little matchstick men, sorry, I couldn't do any more detail, leaning out of her window looking surprised with her arms waving there. By the way, just a little disclaimer, please do not approach this address and knock on the door and ask them awkward questions and things like that, okay? Please respect their privacy. Mrs. Whiteland died long ago, and her son died in 1989. But the people there are probably not, they may well not be related to the family we're talking about here, and they probably won't be able to answer your questions. And it's a good idea not to harass them and bother them with things like this. Thanks very much. So the question is, what is this thing? What could it be? What are we looking at here? Firstly, we have creatures which are described as men. From a dowser who has her own views on what these beings were, and has I take dowsing seriously, by the way. It's something I don't dismiss. So you're talking about people who are perfect humanoids, maybe Nordic type beings, or maybe something else, or maybe they are human and are they dealing with? Is this some kind of secret technology? I mean, how far back does anti-gravity go? Well, I mean, I think I've done some presentations on this, which indicates it actually it does have considerable antiquity. However, does it date back that far? I mean, would an aircraft of that nature be able to be produced that long ago? Supposing, I mean, George Pigott, I think it was I think it was in the 19-teens. He actually patented his levitating ball machine. The history of anti-gravity research doesn't really date back that far to an extent where something like that could be constructed, as far as I know. I know free energy, of course, Tesla, people like that were active in that time. We know that this was around the time Wardenclyffe Tower was built and then demolished, sadly. Tesla, of course, did several experiments, considerable number of years earlier than this. In fact, his experiments dating back to like the late 1890s were classified and remain classified today. So it's possible this is some kind of aircraft, or it's extraterrestrial, or in which case it's a very unusual kind of UFO or vehicle for extraterrestrial beings. It could be this is some kind of interdimensional construction as well. It may have moved through or become visible to Mrs. Whiteland very suddenly or temporarily, though it exists in another world, a parallel universe of some kind, and somehow it even moved through a portal and flew around, or it was visible to her somehow through the different frequencies of reality. The answer is I don't know, and again, it may be worth talking to some of the people in the local area. I mean, I didn't actually go into the pub, but the guy won't go in, just went in very quickly to ask them if we could basically eat there, and they weren't serving food. But maybe when the weather's nicer, we could pay another visit to this location. I think it would be worth doing. Maybe get some more information.
On the coast now, Tony's just told us like there was no roundabout in those days. They tended not to have roundabouts until like the 1950s, I think.
Yeah.
But there was the lady who did the dowsing just told us she was like asking about the beings that lived on standing on the platform. They weren't human, but she tried the word Nordics, and that didn't fit either. So it's a big mystery about what they were. Clearly, I don't think they were not Germans. Despite the fact they were wearing these uniforms, they were not the Zeppelin crew. And as you saw, the Zeppelin gondolas are like totally different. There's nothing like Zeppelins today. They're huge airships. They'd never build airships that big today. That's where the railway station was, guys, behind me. Amazing. Thank you very much, Tony.
You're welcome.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Well, the first or second time?
First time was St Martin's in Exton.
This is a lovely little area, this. It's a really beautiful classic town here at Bury St Edmunds. And we stopped here to have something to eat, because we were going to have a meal in Aldeburgh, but there was nowhere open. So we're going to come here. Look at this, look at these buildings here. There's a cathedral, it's incredible. Yeah, so, I've never been here before, it's really nice.
It's pretty.
Get up here now. It's a lovely Sunday morning here. It's all quiet here in rural Cambridgeshire. It's lovely flat land. I'm on my way home, but Tony is with me.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Tony. And we're heading for Camborne, where there's a bus which I've got to get to go home. And it's my 2-stage bus journey again. No toilets and all the usual rules and regulations. So it'll be all right. It's 3.5 hours, and I'll be home. But I've had a brilliant weekend. I've done things I've never done before. I've been on a mini coach, which I have done that before once. I've been to an escape room, which I've never done before, which is great fun. And I've been to Aldeburgh. Hey, Tony gave us a great tour yesterday at Aldeburgh.
Albeit a wet one.
It was, yeah. But thanks very much for that, Tony. When did you first come across the Aldeburgh Platform? That strange story.
I came across it a long time ago and then forgot about it until I was speaking to you one time. And you mentioned the Aldeburgh Platform, and I thought, oh yes, I remember that. And I researched it again then.
Oh, I gave you the inspiration for this, did I?
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
I first read about it in Janet and Colin Board's Modern Mysteries of Britain. They got a segment on UFOs, and they have this, and I thought this is one of the weirdest UFO stories I've ever heard. I mean, the nature of it, the object itself and the beings, but also the antiquity of it. It's a good over 20 to 30 years before the main modern UFO wave emerged. I mean, this is really a time when UFOs didn't exist in popular culture. I don't think they had things called airships. I mean, of course they were there, weren't they? I mean, UFOs. When was the first UFO seen ever, Tony?
I don't know. Well, people talk about the one in America, what everybody's aware of, but I think they were seen before that.
Oh yeah, I mean, you want to talk about the Aurora incident, which is probably the first example of a crash retrieval.
Yeah.
However, UFOs themselves go back much further. In fact, it's difficult to find the beginning of them. I mean, they appear in old paintings and even cave art, which was made in the Stone Age. You see these disc-shaped objects and people running underneath them and things. In South Africa, there's this cave where you literally see grey aliens, people running around, and like this weird, strange sort of shell-shaped objects above them. It's obviously didn't tend to be up in the air. So it's really is a perennial thing. Probably in prehistoric times, people were having these experiences. However, what happened in the early 20th century, there was what was called the airship. There was mysterious airships, they called them. And some of them were real aircraft. I mean, like the Zeppelins, which are these huge airships, which are bigger actually than any modern airship. But there's no doubt that people knew what those were. I mean, the Zeppelins were like infamous, Tony. I mean,
yes. Well, everybody would have seen pictures of them in the newspapers at the time, wouldn't they?
Everyone was scared of them. I mean, they would, especially here in the east of the country, they would regularly fly over dropping bombs. Wasn't as bad as the World War II blitz, but it was still, a lot of people got killed by these bombs dropped by Zeppelins. So people knew what those looked like. Mrs. Whiteland, whatever her name was, she would have seen these in the newspapers. She'd seen pictures of them. Yeah, what she describes is something she would not have seen in the newspapers. Just a platform, a very simple object, a platform with, she says, brass rails.
Brass rails, and half a dozen people on it.
Yeah,
standing there with uniforms on.
Yeah, it's easy to think men in uniforms with little sailors' caps. They're just like something attached to a balloon or something. No, I don't think so. She never reported any balloon, or she didn't report it being suspended from anything. She reported it levitating.
Yeah.
So it's not a very well-known case, Tony. It's not as famous as many others.
No, most people I talk to have not heard of it. So that's why I thought, as we was doing the escape rooms, which were literally 3 miles away from Aldeburgh, I thought it'd be a good idea to do a little walking talk of the Aldeburgh incident, which isn't very big, to be honest. I mean, it's only a 15-minute talk, but I thought it'd be interesting, as we're so close, to bring it in. But unfortunately, there's a howling wind and torrential rain while we was doing the talk.
It's possible you might not be able to hear. I haven't checked yet, but it's possible you might not be able to hear the entire soundtrack because of the wind on the mic. But I'll fill in anything with any extra. I'll do some extra commentary if necessary. But we did go down, as an outing. I mean, skeptics use the patronising language of pilgrimage, they call it. Dr. David Clark and people like that was talking about people doing pilgrimages to Rendlesham Forest or Roswell. But it's actually, we're interested in the subject, and it's simply interesting to see the places where these happen. I think it really is. We even saw the actual house. Luckily, lot of the... I know that the railway station was knocked down and they built over it, but the actual house where this lady lived is still there. The pub, the Railway Inn, is still there. Called its name gives a clue to what was next door to it. And so Tony, it's been a really interesting thing. So thank you very much for your little tour. Much appreciated.
Nice to have you on board, mate.
Oh, I'm glad to be here, Tony. Now I'm going to head off home, take a little drive through the countryside. Then what's happened? Oh wow, what's happened to my camera? It's gone all cloudy. Hang on. Oh, for some reason my camera's gone cloudy. All right. Not to worry. You may have seen the entire last scene through some kind of fog. I don't know why that is. But anyway, we're going to take a little walk through the countryside, and then we're going to head for home. Okay. Condensation seems to have gone now, guys. I'll just keep rolling to see how it goes. I should have wrapped this in a plastic bag, Tony. It was my own stupid fault. Because I mean, I know I wasn't going to shove it underwater, but I thought, well, you know, if it's going to be rain that hard, I could have got a transparent plastic bag. And I saw the forecast. I knew it was going to be wet. But never mind. I do have a GoPro, you know. A viewer actually gave me a GoPro. It's very nice of them. I only used it a couple of times. I should have brought that with me.
Yeah.
Not to worry. We've just been through the flat marshland, and I've just been noticing, Tony and I have been talking about how there's loads of places in this area called islands, like the Isle of Ely, and I did wonder what that meant, because it's inland, but these were actually like areas of high solid ground above the marsh, because this was all marshland, wasn't it, Tony?
It was originally, yes, it was originally, yeah.
And over the centuries it's been drained, turned into farms, and but they are creating a huge nature reserve for a new one, I gather.
Yeah, that's a Wicken Fen, which is about 15 miles from Cambridge. Eventually it's going to go all the way to Cambridge. It's going to be the biggest nature reserve in the UK, apparently.
Oh, wicked, yeah. Although is it true that some farmers been subjected to compulsory purchase orders?
Yeah, I don't know, but they've said they will do if they can't get the land that they need. But they normally wait for farmers to sell the land when they're selling up, and then they just buy the land up normally.
Yeah, that's well. Hopefully that'll be the case. Although it always worries me when I hear farmland being taken from farmers and put into the hands of government or put in the hands of major corporations. I've done an entire video on this about the situation in South Africa, where there's probably going to be a major famine in the next 20 years as a result of this. And well, I don't want to go off on a rant about the New World Order and food and getting to bother and eat the bugs and things like that, but it's all connected to that. Look at that house there, isn't that lovely? There's loads of these I love these old thatched cottages, Tony. They're really nice.
Yeah, there's quite a few of them around here.
So it looks like the camera's working now, so that's good. No permanent harm done. But if you're watching this, it means it's working. Well, guys, it's a Sunday lunchtime here in Camborne, Cambridgeshire, and people are queuing up to buy petrol. Still going on. Can you believe it? Look at that. I've heard stories about fights breaking out if one of the drivers appears to jump the queue, things like that. The whole thing was organised by the oil companies. I don't know if you watch podcasts of the Lotus Eaters, but there's one episode where Carl, Sargon of Akkad, and his co-host do a thing about the petrol crisis, and they explain how the whole thing was engineered. The whole thing was organised by oil companies, and the government, of course, would get a big tax injection for this. They want to sell off all their lockdown stock before it goes off, before it goes all... petrol turns into jelly if you leave it too long, you can't use it. They want to sell off all their lockdown stock and get a big tax injection. So they make up some story about there being petrol shortages, and and the government put out these headlines saying it's all right, don't panic buy, in the exact tone they use for reverse psychology, as Lisa of Crime Freedom Radio pointed out. And so you have all the right ingredients for a big run on the petrol stations, and yeah, it's sad how we're so malleable. So many people are so malleable. It's sad they don't think about these things, think, well, what's really going on here. But there you go. There you have it. No doubt there'll be more crises coming up this winter. If it's not the coof, and it may well not be, because I haven't heard any talk in the news about no scare stories about spikes and waves, so there'll be something akin to similar to the lockdown in terms of the gas going off and the electricity going off, or Russians hacking the power stations, or something or other. They've got to have some kind of crisis, haven't they? They can't leave us in peace. There's never a time when they sort of stand up and say, everything's fine guys, don't worry. There's always got to be some kind of crisis. And if a real one doesn't break out, they'll make one up. So stand by for a winter of discontent, guys. So, let's keep watching HPANWO TV, and you will keep your own contentment alive. So I got an advert for the new James Bond there.
A white male.
But we now have a big white plastic lunchbox surrounding Boswell's, which is sad. Here in Oxford, where I've returned. This was just Art and Crafts Market. Oh, what's this? Maybe that's what's coming up over here. Anyway, Boswell's was Oxford's oldest department store, and survived the Civil War and the Blitz and all things like that. And along comes this little virus, and it's disappeared. How sad. Anyway, guys, I'm now returning from my pilgrimage. The word just slipped out. Why do the skeptics call it that? The pilgrimage. It's an outing to the Aldeburgh, where the Aldeburgh UFO happened, the Aldeburgh Platform, and it's done for research purposes. It's done for interest. There's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that at all. This is the Art and Crafts Market here, right in the heart of St Giles. I mean, sorry, Broad Street. Why do I always get those two mixed up? I think actually, you know, I've had a really, really good time. If you have a UFO group or a paranormal group or conspiracy group or something like that, going on outings is a really, really good activity, I'd say. Now, a lot of these groups don't do that. A lot of them they have meetings in pubs and things like that. Sometimes they'll book a speaker. Like EA UFO does that. However, they also do organise outings. It's not the first time they've organised some kind of trip. They've been around Rendlesham Forest a few times. They've been a couple of other places, even certainly within their locality. They're quite keen to invite people to go to various places. I'm speaking a bit loudly because there's wind on the mic again. So I would say it's a good idea, and I think when I get Dreaming Saucers going, I will do the same. I'll try and find some places of interest near where I am, and indeed there's no shortage of them because I've shown you some of them already. And I'll organise outings with the group to those various places. Maybe get hold of a coach, like the one you just seen, a luxury mini coach, like the one you've just seen. It's a very good idea. Here I am back at the heart of Oxford. It's been a good weekend. I got home quite quickly. I mean, the coaches and buses were quite reasonable. It's now Sunday. It's a nice Sunday afternoon. The sun has finally come out. At last. And so I'm heading off. I must say, Broad Street has changed. It's a lot more pedestrianised than it used to be, which is nice. I must say, it's quite a good development. I need to buy a book, but I've got to read Ross Coulthard's book first. I'm not buying any new books until I've got at least one off my to-read shelf. And we walk here towards the Chemtrail Central, the Bodleian Library, etc., etc. What's underneath? Oh, I've done that video before, haven't I? It's time to get back to my normal life, which is not as bad as it sounds. And to say a big thank you to the East Anglia UFO group for organising this event and for inviting me along. And from here in sunny Oxford, thank you, all of you, HPANWO TV viewers, for watching. Hospital Porters, pride and dignity, stop the New World Order.